We have learned about standard streams, which are those pre-connected, automatically connected virtual text files that allow data to flow between programs and files or between different programs. And we have learned as well about the redirection operators for them. So we have learned about standard input, standard output, and standard error, the three standard streams that we have in Linux. And we have learned about all of their redirectors, the ones single mode, which are just one greater than sign or smaller than sign, which overwrite the files, and also the double ones with two going to the right, which are to append data to a file. And we can add the numbers for the standard streams, 0 for standard input, 1 for standard output, and 2 for standard error, but we only need really to add the number 2, as we saw in class. I also mentioned two other strange operators that we haven't looked at yet, which are the here document and the here string operators. First, let's see what is a here document. Here documents are multi-line string literals. What does that mean? Well, they are a way of passing multiple lines of text at once to standard input, like if it was a file, but not in a file, on the command line itself. The operator from that is this double sign we see here pointing to the left. It says here we are starting a here document. Here docs are of the following general format. So they start with the command, then the redirection operator, a mark, which is a word. In this case, I use the literal word mark, M-A-R-K, as you can see here. Then there are multiple lines of text followed by the mark again by itself on a line. That finishes the here document. So everything between the two instances of the word, which in this case was mark, but it could be anything you choose, will be redirected to the standard input of the command that we have there on the left of the redirection operator. Variables, which we learned about earlier, can be expanded inside of that block of text. Or not, depending on whether we use quotes around the delimiter word or not. Let's see an example. Here we have WC, we saw that command earlier, and then we have our double smaller than sign and the marker word. Then we have a sentence here and our variable path, our environmental variable that we learned about, which, as you might remember, you should remember, contains all the directories that Linux will search for when you try to execute a program. And then we have the final marker there again. The delimiter, as you see, here is EOF. It appears by itself on a line marking the end of the here document. So it is a good idea to choose something that is not a real word, that is unlikely to appear in your data. EOF is kind of a traditional thing, end of file is not a real word, and we put all caps to make it even lower the probability that it will appear in the data, but it will depend on your data, so careful with that. If we run this, we should see an output like this here. So let's try in practice to see if it really works. WC, our marker, I'll put here the EOF starter word, and as soon as I press enter, we go to the next line and we see this sign here. This is not part of the input, this greater than sign. It's just showing that it's still waiting for things to be typed. The expression is not finished yet. So let's go a quick brown Then on the last line, after we typed everything, we repeat the marker word by itself on a line. And when we press enter now, it signals to the system that the here document is ended and the program can run on that data that we just inputted. This sentence, a quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, the famous one in English, because it contains all the letters of the English alphabet in the sentence. So it used to be used for typing exercises. And here we have our variable path. So after we run that, in my account here, we get 2, 10, and 115. So similar to what we had there on the slide. So here, what we have actually is not path being counted. Remember that WC counts the number of lines, which we have 2 here. These 2 lines here. The number of words. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the last one is a word itself. And then the number of characters. As I mentioned earlier, if we put quotation marks, we can turn on or off the expansion of variables. And it doesn't matter if it is single or double quotes. So let's see, let's put the quotes around the marker word like this. Could be single or double, as I mentioned. If we use the up arrow, it comes back, and we can use the left arrow to go back there. So I don't have to type everything again. I put the first quote and put the second quote. So that's the only difference between the two, as you can see. I don't change anything else here. Press enter. And the output changed quite a bit. Because now path is not being expanded anymore. What does it mean not being expanded? It means we're not using the value from the variable anymore. We're using the literal characters $, P, A, T, and H. And then counting that. That's why the number of characters is smaller. Number of words is still the same. Number of lines is still the same, but character not. Because as we see the contents of the path variable, we see that we have lots of characters here, no spaces. So this is one complete word, one word only in the mind, so to speak, of the system. But there's lots of characters. That's why we go from 115 to 48. We have no more expansion, and we get a smaller number of characters. Here strings, on the other hand, could be thought of as a shortened version of a here document. They are also strings that we're passing to the standard input of a program, but they are limited to one line only, and this line could contain one or more words. The operator for here strings is the triple smaller than sign that we're seeing here, and whatever follows that is the here string. Here strings are very simple. You have the command, the redirector, and the string all in one line, because now we have one line of text to input. So it makes sense to only have everything in one line. We can't divide it like we did in the here document. Variables, again, can be expanded inside the string or not, depending on the kind of quotes we use, if they're single or double around that string. So, for example, here's our sentence again with the path there. Let's run it using the here string mechanism and see what happens. I'm going to use the double quote first. Then don't forget to close the quote. Press enter. We get the same output as this here document up here, that first one we tried, 115 characters, which means we are expanding our variable value here. So that means that if we use a single quote, it will not expand. So let's try that and see if we get the same result as the second example of the here document. And there we go, we do get that. Now path is being considered literally as these 5 characters, which lowers the number we get here. So different outputs for single versus double quote. That's something that is arbitrary, is the way the construct works. If we use the double quotes, we tell the system that we want to expand any variables that appear in there. If we use the single quotes, we turn that off. Anything that has a $sign and something after that is not to be considered a variable anymore. Another thing to consider is that we cannot leave the quotes out when we use a here string. That will lead to an error. We need to use either single or double quotes. Let's see here. We have our example there with single quotes where we don't expand the variable. And now if we remove this single quote, we get a bunch of errors. Because, as we saw earlier, in the command line, space is a delimiter between different arguments on the job, on the command line. So it tries to execute these different things separately. It doesn't take them as a unit. And that leads to all these problems about no such file or directory here. So that's it for these 2 constructs we hadn't seen yet, the here documents and here strings. They're not used a lot in our daily life in the command line, but they're useful to know, especially the here strings, when you want to enter a full line of text into a program and you don't want to create a file just for that. You might use the construct to send something using the standard input of the program and the triple smaller than sign there to send that text into the program. All right, see you later.